Good evening and thank you to everyone joining us today. We welcome you to the first in the series of webinars presented in conjunction with the Indian Heritage Centre's recently launched special exhibition, Sikhs in Singapore, A Story Untold. This exhibition has been co-created with the Sikh community in Singapore and focuses on the history and culture of the Sikhs. To complement the exhibition, this series of webinars introduces various facets of the Sikh community's heritage from the Indian subcontinent and Singapore. Academics and experts will share lesser known aspects of the community's history and culture through these talks, which will be held every month. Today, we are joined by Amardeep Singh, who will be bringing us along on his journey tracing Guru Nanak's travels. And moderating this session is Simranjeet Singh. Simranjeet Singh is the CEO of Gardan Health Asia, Middle East and Africa, a cancer diagnostics company. He has 15 years of senior management experience in Asia Pacific, working with biopharma, diagnostics, and medical device companies for their R&D, business expansion, and growth strategies for the region. He also sits on the board of the Oversight Committee for the National Health Innovation under the Ministry of Health. His passion for movies has allowed him to be involved as an associate professor for a Hollywood film, Hotel Mumbai, and as an executive producer for an award-winning documentary, The Saint Soldier, the story of the first Sikh in Singapore, Bhai Maharaj Singh. Simran is an active volunteer and a well-known face in the Sikh community and currently serves on the Central Sikh Gurdwara Board and the Sikh Advisory Board. Simran, could I invite you to introduce today's talk and our speaker today as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Malvika, for the introduction. Sat Sri Akal, everyone, and welcome for today's talk entitled On the Trail of Guru Nanak. Guru Nanak, the first Sikh Guru or teacher of the Sikh faith, traveled vast areas on his quest to seek and impart spiritual wisdom. In the 16th century, his travels covered a region which today comprises 9 countries: Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and China. To break barriers across faiths by engaging in spiritual dialogues, Guru Nanak visited more than 150 Islamic, Sufi, and Hindu sites. Amardeep Singh will share his insights into Guru Nanak, his travels, and his lives as he retraces his steps through these 9 countries. Amardeep Singh spent 25 years in a corporate career, heading Asia Pacific region at American Express for revenue management. In 2014, he embarked on a path to document lost legacies of the Sikh community in challenging geographies. He authored 2 books, Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan, and The Quest Continues, Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan. He also produced 2 documentaries on the remnants of the Sikh legacy in Pakistan. He is currently engaged in producing the multi-episode documentary Allegory, A Tapestry of Guru Nanak's Travel, which has been filmed in 9 countries. It's been an amazing journey, and we will be able to find out more about it through the presentation. We will have a discussion and a Q&A session after the talk. You may leave your questions for the speaker using the Q&A button on your screens. With that, over to you, Amardeep.
Thank you, Simran, and thank you to the India Heritage Center team for giving this opportunity to present at this session, which is in a part of a series of the Singapore community, the Sikh community's presence in Singapore under the exhibition called A Story Untold, Sikhs in Singapore. So thank you so much. I'm humbled to be given an opportunity to talk about Guru Nanak, who's associated with the Sikh faith. But Guru Nanak is a towering, charismatic personality. And the more we've walked his path, the more we have realized, you do read in books about the message of Guru Nanak, the oneness, which was his mission, and which is why he was revered by all, one and all. But over the period of time, that happens with all the faiths, the construction of boundaries and hardening of thoughts and processes tend to kind of divide communities and people, although Guru Nanak is an expression that is beyond divisions, right? So as we walked on his path uh, in this making of allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels, one thing has been very clear. We've been able to get so much of past data in terms of visual sights and understanding the intangible understanding, which makes us believe clearly that it's probably wrong to term Guru Nanak as the founder of Sikh faith. He was a man who was charismatic. He was a reformist. He was much ahead of his time. 550 years back, for a person to talk about women's empowerment, which really the Western world is talking in present times, he was talking about it 550 years back. Right? There's so many aspects of Guru Nanak which are relevant in today's world, and he was a reformist much ahead of his time. So therefore, I do not associate him with the Sikh faith. I associate him with humanity. With that, let me start off my presentation. I've got a presentation which I'll walk you through. I'll just share my screen here. Give me a minute. So, okay, so on the trail of Guru Nanak, and if anyone wants to contact me, my email is there, amardeepsinghrangar@gmail.com. I've said a little bit about Guru Nanak, but if I was to define Guru Nanak through our travels and through getting to know him both in a tangible domain as well as the intangible domain, I would say he is not a physical person, but he's an expression of oneness. And in today's world, which is more and more being fragmented by religions, by geographies, by politics, it is time when people do really understand, try and understand what Guru Nanak stood for. He stood for oneness, right? His most profound message, Ik Onkar, Ik basically means one. And he's starting his most basic message with the word numeral one. And one basically signifies oneness of the entire creation, not just of humanity. We are all intertwined, we are all interconnected, whether it be the trees, the animals, the entire nature. And in some ways, one reflects what we are going through as a pandemic, as mankind pushed the envelope so hard to an extreme that the nature is responding back and telling us. And therefore, we are one, and we have to be mindful of our existence as one single unit, right? And therefore, we have called this project as allegory. Now, allegory is an overarching mystery, a revelation of a hidden meaning, which conveys something much, much deeper in layers, which cannot be defined by little words. And Guru Nanak cannot be defined by words. He's an expression of oneness that has to be unraveled. Guru Nanak to us is a free-spirited reformist, a charismatic person. And what better way than to say this, that through his own words, where he says this in the Guru Granth Sahib, the scripture which the Sikh community follows, Guru Nanak's profound words, which have led us on this journey, why we've actually devoted ourselves for 3 years walking the path to document for posterity, is because Guru Nanak says, "Jab lag duniya rahiye Nanak, kich suniye kich kahiye." So what he's saying is, Nanak says, as long as we exist in this world, strive to acquire and impart knowledge. Because that's what really matters, right? We're all interconnected. It's not about the boundaries of faith. Strive to acquire from others, strive to impart to one and all, because there is a message of oneness. No one is trying to convert anyone. No one is trying to give a message of what you should be. And that's what Guru Nanak stands for. He believes in oneness of mankind. Moving from there, I think Guru Nanak, before we move on and share about his journey, we need to understand a little bit about his intangible aspect, which I think, unfortunately, deserves probably a minute of pause out here, because he has not been projected by the people who basically love him for his philosophy. There are over the Sikh community, which is often associated as being the followers of Guru Nanak, is about 30 million in the world. But actually, if you put numbers in terms of followers of Guru Nanak who have an association with him, you're talking about something like 60, 70. It's a number that's hard to put down to, but it's a bigger Nanak Panthi community, the Panth of Nanak, the community of Nanak. Right? There's many more than just the Sikhs who believe in him. And the most important thing about his philosophy is that unfortunately, we belonging to the Indic traditions have acquired a knowledge, a language which is not our language, which is what we are talking in right now, English. And the Indic language, when translated into English, it misses many aspects. And therefore, when the British came into India, when they encountered diversity of the belief systems, they defined some of the belief systems like Vedanta or Sikhism and the others as monotheistic thoughts. And it calls for a clarification out here, because the community that believes in Guru Nanak has been writing many books about defining who and what his thoughts were. And they always use the word monotheism. Monotheism defines basically as an Abrahamic thought that God is one. No one is denying that. The people and the creation are created by God, but one cannot be the other. And what Guru Nanak is saying by putting the numeral one is that it's not monotheism, it's monism. Monism is that the entire ecosystem is one. And therefore, with that perspective, what he says is, again in Gurmukhi, in Gurbani, which is in the Guru Granth Sahib, the scripture that the Sikh community follows and many others follow who believe in Guru Nanak, he says, "Chhe ghar, chhe gur, chhe updes, gur gur eko ves anek, jay ghar karte kirat hoye, so ghar rak vadhai hoye." I'll explain this. What Guru Nanak is saying, he's an advocate of diversity and he's an advocate of oneness. What he's trying to say here is that the Indic philosophical system, and he talks from an Islamic point of view, he talks from many other thoughts, philosophical thoughts perspective, but I'm just picking up the Indic thought, which is the Indian traditions, which were anchored from a philosophy perspective into 6 Indic philosophical thoughts, which go by the names of schools of thoughts like Vedanta, you go by Mimamsa, Sankhya, Yoga. There are 6 schools of thought, right? And what he's saying is there are these 6 thoughts that are existing, and there are 6 leaders of that, 6 teachers of that, and there are 6 philosophical propositions of these school of thoughts, right? But what he's saying is the teacher amongst all these teachers of the 6 philosophical systems is basically one. And that one, if any of these homes recognizes, I basically sacrifice myself to that home. And that's the beauty of Guru Nanak, because he's accepting the diversity amongst this oneness. And he's trying to say that no one is unique, no one can claim that you're better than the others, accept everyone for who they are. And in that process, what you basically say is that it's the monism that everything is one. I'll move on defining Guru Nanak's life. Now, Guru Nanak was born 550 years back in the year 1469. I'm just laying down because our topic out here is about the travels of Guru Nanak. And so therefore, I'm going to focus on that aspect alone. But yet, I'm starting off with 1469 when he's physically born in a place called Talwandi, which is now known as Nankana Sahib in Pakistan. It's close to Lahore. And his wisdom, his physical body that he left is in 1539, but his wisdom continues to live. He is still living in this world through his wisdom. So this is not literally his life being defined in 1469 to 1539. This is just the bodily life that we're talking about. His wisdom continues. But it's really at the age of 20 years because he traveled far and wide. And from an Indian tradition point of view, I was born in India. I have educated there, but I've always wondered, that in India, we talk about Alexander, we talk about Yun Xiang, we talk about many travelers. We even are taught about Christopher Columbus going to America, right? We talk about people who traveled, who explored. But here's one person from the Indian subcontinent, which is the undivided India. He was born in Pakistan, which was earlier the Indian subcontinent. There was nothing like India at that time, but the subcontinent where the traditions and cultures were porous. And here's a person who traveled more than many of the people that we are being taught about. And his mission was humanity, oneness. And yet, in the Indian system, when I was studying there, no one really tells us about this. And that's what is driving us to say that we need to actually document his life in a manner. If 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 big production houses can make a life journey about Columbus, about Alexander, and the other Yun Xiang, why not about Nanak, who had no personal motives, who was basically there for the mankind, right? So let's look at it. When did he start getting this desire to travel? It's the documented traditions say that at the age of 20 years, he traveled far and wide with his companion, who was basically Mardana. He was from the Muslim faith. Both were from the same village in Talwandi. And he asks him at the age of 20 years that let's go on a travel to experience regions and people of diverse beliefs across the world. And Mardana, who was a rabab player, a pluck instrument player, was keen. He was much elder to him, but he declines at that time because his daughter was to get married, his kids were to get settled. But the thought was there in his mind. And so his life continues to 1504, 35 years of age, when he's employed in Sultanpur Lodi, which is a region in India, in the Indian Punjab. He's employed as a granary keeper, Modi Khana, where he's actually working for Sultanpur Lodi. One day, at the age of 35 years, so he's already going through this turmoil within him, and he's trying to look at the expression of oneness. But what people write, the texts write, is about a revelation. And I tend to believe that revelation is a very Abrahamic way of defining things, right? I think revelations, life's journey is what results in an evolution. And so therefore, it's not like a binary. We always present Jesus having a revelation, Moses having a revelation, Buddha having a revelation, Nanak having a revelation. I tend to differ a bit because it's an evolution. It's the internal turmoil and the quest and the journey that one's going through internally. Physical journey is something different. And in 1504, at the age of 35, he emerges from the river Bain. And what the texts write, his first words are, Na ko Hindu, na Musalman. What he's saying is, there is no Hindu and there is no Muslim. Now, I just said in the earlier slide, that he's an advocate of diversity. He's recognizing all the six philosophical systems. Today, Hindus and Muslims are still existing. So what was Nanak saying? By his negating there is no Hindu and Muslim, which is the men of faith who have written it. Guru Nanak has not written that in his writings in the Guru Granth Sahib. The beauty about Guru Nanak is that he's written nothing about his life. All he's taught is the spiritual values on how one should live the life, the profoundness of life itself, the experience of life. What he writes is where the answer is, because no one knows what he said. It's the men of faith who have written it that he said, Na ko Hindu, na Musalman. Actually, what he's saying is, Eko dharam dride sach koi. What he's basically saying is, there is only one religion if you call something as religion, and that is truth. The boundaries is what he's not defining, and he's saying in that process of saying there's no Hindu and Muslim, he's saying truth is the only religion, because all Hindus and Muslims and Sikhs now are existing, Christians are existing, Jews are existing, we are all existing in the diverse world. But what he's trying to say is there is only one religion, and that's truth. And thereafter, in 1504, he embarks on a first odyssey that takes him across for 12 years with Mardana, with Bhai Mardana. The two of them travel far and wide, 35 years to 47 years, which is being termed as the East and the South Odyssey, traveling through eastwards to the Bangladesh, through India. They travel from the Indian subcontinent through Bangladesh, go southwards, go to Sri Lanka, and then come back, and from the western side of the Indian coast, travel upwards, come back to Nankana Sahib, which is now in Pakistan. 1517 to 1520, he embarks with Bhai Mardana on a third journey. on a second odyssey. And the second odyssey takes him northwards to the Tibetan plateau. And that goes through Lahore in Pakistan, into the northern regions in India, Himachal Pradesh, and goes into Tibet towards Kailash Mansarovar, turns back through Ladakh, through Baltistan in Pakistan. He comes downwards into Punjab and comes back to Pakistan. The third journey in 1520 to 24 now takes him, along with Bhai Mardana, who was his Muslim companion, westwards to the Islamic world, traveling through Arabian Sea into the deserts of Hijaz, basically, which is the Saudi Arabia and the broader deserts up till Iraq, from Mecca, Medina, going into Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and then coming back into Pakistan and into Nankana Sahib, which was Talwandi then. And at that point, then he moves to closer to the India-Pakistan border, which was one region at that time, which is a place called Kartarpur. And he sets up a communion out there, a commune there. And that commune, which later becomes his place where he spends his life after his fourth travel. So he sets that up, and then he starts on another mission. But this time, the texts are a bit silent about whether Bhai Mardana travels with him. Probably it's at this point that he passes away. He was elder to him. And Guru Nanak then travels basically on a smaller journey, which still takes him 2 years, going through Punjab, Rajasthan in India, and coming into Pakistan's Punjab, South Punjab, and then coming back into Kartarpur. And that's where he then settles down for the rest 13 to 14 years of his life, and then leaving his body, and the wisdom continues. So I just wanted to put this as a perspective. A man who traveled 22 years, what today stands to be 9 countries, is a very vast landscape. And it's at times one wonders, because we've done this journey, how he would have done it, right, in those times. But that's a separate question altogether, how he would have done it. But let's move on. When we were in Pakistan, in Baltistan region, this has been a very personal quest for us also, internally, trying to understand Guru Nanak. And the question that we pose to ourselves is, why did Guru Nanak travel? And I am not here to justify why he did what he did. These are just purely my thoughts, right? And I'm trying to justify it for myself through what I felt in that region, at a high altitude region, nestled between the Karakoram ranges and the Himalayan ranges on the banks of the river Indus. This is what I'll just share with you as a video.
In the silent valley of Baltistan, standing in front of the flowing Indus River, on the right-hand side is the Karakoram range of mountain, and on the left is the Himalayan range of mountain. Looking at these mountains and the flowing river, I'm compelled to pose a question as to why did Guru Nanak go through such hardships to travel to such remote locations? Probably the answer lies in the nature itself. These mountains go through winter hardships to accumulate snow, which melts thereafter to become the source of life in the form of water for the people residing in the lower regions. Guru Nanak also went through such hardships to accumulate spiritual knowledge by interacting with people of different faiths. And then he bestowed this knowledge to the people for their spiritual upliftment.
So that's my 2 cents of trying to justify from the nature itself, because Guru Nanak is a part of nature. We are a part of nature. What do we learn from nature? What does nature teach us? And we are just a sub part of that, because that's what Guru Nanak believes also. And he writes it also, that we are just a figment of the nature, right? And therefore, this was my personal justification of why probably he traveled so far away and went through such hardships, right? But the hardships have given a lot of benefits to the mankind much later. 550 years after his life, people still continue to be inspired by his words, right? The interesting thing out here, before we embark on a journey on tracing Guru Nanak's travels, it's important to understand what's the structure that we're going to follow. How are we going to actually map this out? Because it's a very complicated subject which has not been documented, because you have leaders like, let's say, Babur, who came into India, or Jahangir, who ruled from the Mughal dynasty, or Yun Xiang, right, who traveled from China to India. They all have written their accounts. And when people write their accounts, then you have something to bank on, right? You've got a primary source. The only primary source of Guru Nanak is the message of oneness, the spirituality that he's giving, the wisdom that he's giving. He is not talking about himself. And yet we are trying to create a life journey of Guru Nanak when he has written nothing about himself. How are you going to do it? It's a big problem. So here's what starts the unraveling of the entire textual context of as to how you're going to actually approach this mapping of Guru Nanak's travels. So the closest Guru Nanak gets to saying anything about a physical aspect of his journey, and he does not mention where this happens. He still does not mention because he only talks in a spiritual term, right? He says when Babur attacks Punjab and he comes into the Indian subcontinent, Babur was his contemporary who established the Mughal dynasty in India, which ruled for many years, right? But what he says is, Khurasan khasmana kiya, Hindustan daraya. I mean, having devastated the entire land of Khurasan, Central Asia, which today's world, I mean, you would have heard the word Khurasan, which is the ISIS thing that they are claiming, right? But Guru Nanak is talking about Khurasan 550 years back. He says, Khurasan khasmana kiya. He destroyed it. And then he's come to Hindustan. He's crossed the Indus and he's come eastwards. And he's instilling fear in Hindustan. Now, where did this happen? No one knows. Men of faith say that this happened somewhere in the region of Ahmedabad or Sialkot, but Guru Nanak does not say that. So we got to look at what are the texts out here. 65 years after his life, the first scribe, Guru Nanak was followed by 10 Sikh gurus, right? 10 gurus whom the Sikh faith believes in. And that entire journey of 10 gurus was 250 years. So just to give you a context, 65 years after Guru Nanak's life, right now the Sikh gurus are pretty much there. The leadership baton and spiritual baton is still passing down. Bhai Gurdas, in the time of the 5th and 6th guru, writes about the accounts up till the 6th guru. And in this, he makes a mention about Guru Nanak's expansive travels, right? And he talks about Mardana, traveling along with him. Interestingly, the entire community talks about two people traveling with him. One is Bala and one is Mardana. In fact, all the texts, still 150 years, are absolutely silent about this person called Bala. This appears much later. It's basically all the earliest traditions are only talking about two people who are traveling, Nanak, Guru Nanak, and Bhai Mardana, who's his Muslim companion, that's friend, right? So he's talking about Guru Nanak having traveled to Makkah, Baghdad, Sumer, Batala, and so on and so forth. 70 to 100 years after his life, men of faith start writing. Like in the Buddhist traditions, 500 years after Buddha, there are these Jatakas written. They are the source of understanding of the message in the life of Buddha. Similarly, the Janam Saki tradition is written about 70 to 100 years after his life. And these are classified by names in the current context. That time they didn't have any names, but we have classified them as Meherban, B40, Colebrook, Hafizabad. You'll find some English names here because when the British came into Punjab, they took away a lot of our historical treasures, and the B40 is a nomenclature in the British Library. Colebrook is the man who took it to Britain. So these are the various. Meherban is from Punjab itself. Various Janam Sakis, which composite, you call them as the oldest texts. Now, till 100 years, there's no mention of Bala. It's only Guru Nanak and Bhai Mardana's traveling. 150 years later, another text comes in, which is Bala Janam Saki, right? And the third person comes inside. Now, this is probably a manifestation of someone's desire to be a part of that journey, and he writes a text. If I write something here, 200 years from now, it can become a historical source, right? I've done 2 books on Sikh legacy remnants in Pakistan. I may have made a mistake. I'm not perfect, but I know because I've written it, I've documented it. 200, 250 years down the line, people will consider it as a historical element. So someone writes a narrative 150 years after his life, and that today has been the most popularized amongst the followers of Nanak. And thereafter, many more texts come in, and those are in the second last box. I'll basically go down to the last box. The interesting thing is we are living in a world where history is written in the WhatsApp, in the Facebook, in the internet, and you can write anything you wish like writing. And therefore, the point that I'm trying to make here is in present times, Guru Nanak is continuing to travel. He has not stopped. In many ways, that English term juggernaut, an invincible force which cannot be stopped, probably applies to Guru Nanak in present times, that the men of faith are sending him anywhere that they are traveling or they are perceiving that he must have come here, and he just writes something and therefore he just continues to travel. In fact, there's a YouTube video. I'm just being a bit, just adding a bit of humor to this. There's a YouTube video which also claims Guru Nanak has visited America, right? And so where do you stop this? Now, we therefore are saying we will draw the line at 70 to 100 years of text. Now, the challenge with these texts is that there is a lot of commonality, but there are a lot of variances too. Now, we are not in this journey out here to kind of recreate the wheel, and I'll come and share with you what comes out to be as our reference, but we've drawn a line to the text at about 150 years. That's all we're going to assimilate and take out a rationalized vision of what rationalized understanding of where he has traveled, and then try and recreate that journey. Even if we can do that, I think we would have put forward something for posterity, right? So based on that, where has he traveled? We'll start from Pakistan, where he was born in the Indian subcontinent. He's been to India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Tibet, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. 9 countries. Anything else that people are claiming, I am not going to question anyone's faith, but I can tell you from the texts written up till 150 years, these are the only regions. Beyond that, wherever you want to send Guru Nanak, you're free to send him. But I always say, send his teachings to your heart. That's what is more important, right? Because where he's traveled is a physical travel. And why are we doing this physical travel? Because we're trying to understand the most intrinsic thing of the allegory of Nanak we're trying to understand. Now, what does it take to first do this? So we'll take this map of where I've shaded, this is a huge landscape. And if you start looking at this and you start drawing the risk or accessibility issues around this map, you will find 70% of this geography is very challenging today to access from a filming perspective or from a research perspective, because sovereign boundaries do not permit you to do that. Political challenges do not allow you to do that, and you will have to take life risks to do this, right? And one has taken life risks with this team to do this, to basically go and tell the story of Guru Nanak, which is beyond the temples, beyond the gurdwaras, which the Sikh community believes are a representation of Guru Nanak. I have, with all due respect, gurdwaras are there which have been made much after Guru Nanak's life, but Guru Nanak did not travel to any of the gurdwaras. And gurdwaras here, for the people who are not of the Sikh community, from the Sikh community who are on this presentation, I just want to clarify, gurdwara, I might use this word again, represents the Sikh temple, where the place of worship where the Sikh community congregates. There was no gurdwara in the time of Guru Nanak. He was a person traveling into various multi-faith sites. And these multi-faith sites basically comprised of religions or belief systems that were Islamic, Sufi, Hindus, Jain, Buddhist, Born faith, and the Nath-panthis. Today we define faiths in isms, but that time there were no isms, there were porous boundaries, and he was traveling to these various traditions, the faith belief system, and therefore replicating Guru Nanak's life journey is a beautiful opportunity to bring together an interfaith understanding. Now, that interfaith understanding, when you've got the overarching umbrella of what one is saying is oneness, you might have certain things being challenged by Guru Nanak. Being a reformist, he will challenge them, and some people will feel uncomfortable, but he's not challenging anything other than the basic thing that if you're not believing in oneness, then it's time get together and believe in oneness. We are all diverse communities, but we are one. And then the biggest challenge in doing this journey is the significant time commitment, resources. It's a very ambitious project, never has been attempted, and we have managed to do it. But what gave us the confidence to do this, right? Now, I just want to quickly pass through this slide is, since my American Express job, where I'd spent about 25 years in the corporate world, I've embarked on two journeys on the left-hand side, exploration one and exploration two. I have traveled deeply across the Indus region, comprising of the five rivers of the Indus region, the Punjab's five rivers in Pakistan and India, and deep down into Sindh, Balochistan, on the borders of Afghanistan and Pakistan side, and up to Kashmir. That's the exploration one, basically exploring the remnants of the Sikh legacy, which basically was evaporated in the partition of 1947, a community which basically was born on the lands of the river system of Indus, just evaporated because of faith-based division in 1947 as British left India, destroyed an entire composite culture. And to me, it was very close to my heart that this needs to be documented. That's the first journey. The second journey, which has happened in phases, I have, at this point of time, I can proudly claim that I've been able to perform the journey of along the Indus River from its source close to Mansarovar to its basin in Karachi in Tibet, and in Karachi at the Arabian Sea. And what have I learned? So these two are very complicated journeys, and the divine has given us that opportunity to do it. What has resulted out of that in the second, on the right hand side, is the books and the documentaries, which are all books are available on the Amazon, on lostheritagebook.com. Documentaries are there on the YouTube. And it's a very niche segment that I've been devoting myself, but this has given us the confidence. How do you navigate through these complex journeys? How do you navigate and then look for the stories? Because this is not, while you're posing risk to your life, you are not doing academic research where you've got a document to write things on. It's all in your memory. You just store it, because that's what the challenge in these explorations is. It's a stealth mission, literally. And that then positioned us to carry on this journey on Allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels. Now, as I said out earlier, up to 150 years of his life, there is a lot of similarities in text, but there are a lot of variances too. So I'm not going to the latter text, but you know what? We are not here to recreate the wheel. Our job is to give a visual context, and I'll tell you why that visual context needs to be done. It's not the physical sites that are important. It's the allegory. It's the understanding of the Guru Nanak's thought, the message of that he was conveying across the multi-faith sites. But you have to start with the physical sites, because that's how you are going to attract the attention. I am not a preacher. I'm not here to preach anyone about Guru Nanak. I'm here to understand Guru Nanak for myself, but I want to make it relevant for the present generation, whether it be my own community, or whether it be anyone else who's interested in explorations. Because when you catch the attention of the people through the sites, which is not restricted to just one community, then you start becoming curious to understand, who is this person? Why was he doing it? What was his motivation? How did he do it? And what's the message he left? Message is an outcome. And that's where we are ultimately trying to come, by unraveling the allegory. But we have to start visually. Otherwise, I can stand in a church or in a gurdwara or a temple. I'm not a preacher. No one's going to hear me. And I'm not here to preach about Guru Nanak, but I want Guru Nanak to be understood. So we are not here to recreate the wheel. We've taken up the most reasonable account assimilation that we find is in the Dr. Kirpal Singh's analytical study of Janamsakhi traditions, the earliest traditions, and he has basically documented that. We've taken that and we say, we're going to give this a visual context. Now, that's a massive documentation, 24-episode documentary, 45 minutes each episode, 18 hours length, a sequential life narrative. Our objective is from his birth to his last days in his physical form. How are we going to present Guru Nanak in a sequential life narrative form? By visiting 100% of the multi-faith sites that he has visited across these 9 countries. It has taken us 3 years, and we are hoping by the end of this year, we will present it to the world. We have got a lot of challenges we have overcome. This is not a commercial project. These are only very few well-wishers who understand the long-term impacts, whether it be my projects in terms of the Sikh legacy remnants in Pakistan, or be the journeys across Indus to understand the various communities that are there, or be the allegory tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels. I'm operating in a very niche segment. Very few people understand the long-term implications of this. But if the divine is opening these gates for you, you simply say, materialism is not that all that is life is for. We feel blessed that we've been given this opportunity to do this. Our future plans are to translate this in Punjabi and Hindi, God willing, inshallah, as they say, if the community rallies around and sees the value in the English product, then if they rally and support us, we want to also translate this into Punjabi and Hindi for the masses. I'm going to get down to what are the pillars of allegory. In the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to wrap this up very quickly. So allegory, the 24-episode documentary rests on three pillars as concepts that we're developing it 3 years into the making. First is all about Guru Nanak. It's about Guru Nanak. So the first pillar is about really visiting all across 9 nations, all the sites of all the belief systems, Hindu, Islamic, Buddhist, Jain, alternative traditions, the Nath yogis, memorial sites which the Sikhs made much later, or not just the Sikhs, the believers of Nanak. Even there were many Hindus and Muslims who built sites around them. Visiting those sites also, but giving them also space, but really first starting from where Guru Nanak visited. And through that then, bringing in 2 more pillars. Most of the time, we throw the Janam Sakhi traditions by saying that it's myth. You know what? People, when they write in the artistic domain, you have to unravel that to understand what's there in the mind. And therefore, the artworks, about 300 artworks in the Janam Sakhi traditions, which represent deeper metaphoric meanings associated with the verses that Guru Nanak has written, we are giving space to that, unravel that, but the story is anchored through the sites and giving those Janam Sakhi traditions unraveling by banking on the last pillar under Guru Nanak is musicology, because Guru Nanak is all about music and word. He's written in over 30 rags, which is the musical measures, and we have maintained the approach of maintaining all his verses to be sung in the rags that he has written it in, with the feeling of what Rabab would be playing along with this, because Nanak and he were traveling together, how they would have conveyed the message. But one mythological aspect, what people throw this artwork, I'm giving one example, where Bhai Bardana, and you see a pluck instrument Rabab lying below, and there's a ram standing there next to the Rabab, is a representation in the Janam Sakhi traditions. When he went to the eastern side of India, he was converted by the women who caught hold of him, the believers of Tantra worship, and they converted him to a ram. Now, someone has drawn this, and most of the people in our community just discards this entire work because it's mythology. How can he be converted into a ram? You know, when you read Guru Nanak's verse associated with it, you realize it's not the physical transformation of Bhai Mardana into a ram, but it's that like a ram, like a sheep, which just follows one another, your thought process gets jammed, and that basically becomes a one-way. You're following just someone who's taking you where you've lost the independence of your own existence. That's what the physical representation of a ram represents. And that's the allegory that you have to unravel, because it's been 550 years. We are not trying to actually unravel this to tell to the world what these things stand for. And then going to the second block, diversity. Guru Nanak is all about diversity. He traveled to places where he actually also collated verses from diverse traditions, and all of them find the place in the Sikh tradition, the Sikh scripture, the Guru Granth Sahib. It's not just about Guru Nanak, it's about a teamwork. So 250 years before Guru Nanak, the Sufi saint Baba Farid in Pakpatan, Guru Nanak visited there. He collated his verses and he gave it space inside the Guru Granth Sahib. In fact, the documented traditions in the Sufi tradition, in the Islamic traditions, documented Baba Farid's verses evolved much after Guru Nanak had documented them. Kabir in India is a very well-known Bhakti tradition saint. But really, if you understand Kabir's work, Bijak, actually comes much later by men of faith. But it's Guru Nanak's writings in the Guru Granth Sahib which were documenting and giving space to Kabir. So there are about 14 such saints. They may not have met Guru Nanak, because there were some were contemporary and some were before him, but their thoughts met and philosophies met, because that there's a space being given in the Sikh scripture, the Guru Granth Sahib. So therefore, we went into these places, and we've also given these diverse saints a space inside this documentary. And the last piece is, we need to tell the story in contemporary time as an explorer. My own soul is in a process of an evolution in this journey. And as it's going through that journey, I'm having reflections to understand who Guru Nanak is, what is he trying to say, where have we deviated, where have we moved away? And those questions, those reflections, as I pose questions, I am not going to give any answers, because I'm not competent to give answers. But I'm looking for the verses of Guru Nanak in the contemporary times, which are going to resound to me through my soul. and give me the answer in the musicology to tell me what Guru Nanak is saying, which is relevant to contemporary times. So we are trying to make this entire historic documentation 24 episode series relevant to the present times. Just moving forward and bring this to end in 5 minutes, unfurling this narrative. As I said earlier, 70% of the region is today under political divisions where you cannot go and film. Even if you get in there, how will you get inside the sites of various faiths? There are barriers there. Let's take in India. You have to go and Guru Nanak's narrative is in the Jagannath temple or Ujjain temple. How will you get inside? The people or the societies who control these religious sites do not permit you to go inside them to film. How are you going to unravel this? Even if you're posing risk by going into Afghanistan, that's a life you've written off, right? You've taken the risk. But now you've crossed that and you come to a place where life is not at risk. How are you going to navigate through to inside those sites where Guru Nanak had been? World is very different now. And therefore, when we embark, we only ask for grace from the divine to say that, you've made us succeed in our past journeys. Can you please hold our hand and let us live this through, because we really want to do this. And as we went through, I'll give you some examples. India seems to be a relatively easier country, as everyone claims. Though we had got the letters written by the central government, right? Yet every state, every place, you are navigating through problems. Here we are in South India. We were filming and the police has caught us and they are taking us for interrogation. Every moment that you lose, there's a cost in this production. Right? It's a production that's taken us 1.5 years to do. It's not a commercial production. We don't have we don't see this series going to actually give us any return on investment. The return on narrative is going to be there, but no return on dollars investment. But then the people who have backed us up, every dollar of that is valuable because we don't have much of it. Right? And then we waste a day in going into a police station and spending ourselves, we are incurring a cost, right? So that's the other aspect. Getting into Afghanistan, in the place where an entire Hindu and Sikh community, along with the Afghani Muslim community, used to stay there in a place called Prem Nagar. When we get in there, not a single follower of Nanak is left there today. But the beauty is the oneness of mankind. Khalida Begum, with her AK-47, invites her at her home and basically feeds us. And to us, that's the beauty of the whole thing, right? And as we're traveling through this, my beard is all flying all over, and she gives me 1,000 rupees, Afghani rupee at the end, which I refused to take. But then she got very upset because she said, conveyed in Pashto language, he says, this man looks to be a poor man. His beard is flying all over. His socks have got holes inside it. Tell him to go buy socks in Kabul. To me, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of mankind, right? In Pakistan, standing at the temple next to Sheikh Bahauddin Zakaria's shrine, where used to be a Sikh temple also next to this, but this is the place where Prahlad, Holi, the festival which the Indian subcontinent, the Hindus and the other communities actually celebrate, even any Indic tradition, even Sikhs celebrate, Jains, Buddhists, all the Indic traditions celebrate that. But in that, where was Prahlad from? The story, I'll not get into that, but Prahlad was from Multan, which is in Pakistan now. And this is the Sun Temple, which is built in the name of Prahlad. It's in a pretty bad shape. But we had to bring that narrative because Guru Nanak writes about Prahlad. And therefore, and he visits Sheikh Bahauddin Zakaria's shrine, which is next to this. And therefore, they had to be given space. Getting into Tibet at a time when 1 year later, India and Tibet are on these border areas. This is very border area. This is the Satluj River basin in the Tibetan plateau. Are actually on the verge of clashing. Just a few months back, they were clashing on this border region. And to go there and to film, only divine can be with you that you can do it, right? On below Iraq, this is my wife, Nikki, who's there. We had to adapt ourselves. And many times we've done this. In Guru Nanak's narrative also is written that when he went to Sri Lanka, he tied ropes on his head. He put the vermilion mark on his forehead. He was becoming one of the people because that's how he was trying to actually have a dialogue. Unless you become one of them amongst the people, you can't have a dialogue. And that's what we had to do. And this is the reflection of how she had to dress up. In India, Guru Nanak's time in Punjab, there was this huge tradition of the Nathpanthi yogis, what we call as the Kanfatta yogis, the pierced ears one. That tradition is totally finished now. But finding these people, a few of them, so this is what Kanfatta yogis, they pierce their ears and they bear these big earrings made out of wood, in a belief that this process, this physical process, results in managing of their certain senses in the body and controlling them, finding them, because Guru Nanak has met them, and there is an entire narration around Nath Jogis, right? And you have to find them to make this documentary. In Iran, in Mashhad, getting inside the sites like Imam Ali Raza's site where he had been, how do you get inside to film? Only divine can help it, because cameras are not allowed inside, but he did it. And in Sri Lanka, in the communities where, in the Tamil communities, there's a story that's still going on that Guru Nanak had come here, unraveling those aspects. Bringing this to an end with the last 1 or 2 more minutes, I want to show in Afghanistan, in Kabul, risking our life. I mean, we've had very, very near death experiences in doing this, right? But that's not what we want to talk about. This is not about us. We have decided to walk this path. But I'll show you on the right-hand side, when we filmed inside this Sikh temple, the Gurdwara, in April 2019, in April 2020, that same place, and you'll see it in this video, I'm showing you a picture where some people went inside and they blindly fired through the AK-47s, killing many of the Hindu and Sikh community that was living inside this Gurdwara, a community which was 300,000 people in Afghanistan at the time of Russian invasion many years back, has now been reduced to just 1,000 people, of which a good about 30-40 people died in this attack. But at the same place, we made an effort to find a tradition which till 50 years back, before Russian invasion, Muslims used to come to this Gurdwara and they used to sing Guru Nanak's verses. But their descendants have forgotten. And we had to find the descendant of that tradition to find out and help them actually and request them to revive from their memories what they had heard their father. And these people came down and sang for us in the same place, and you'll see it out here. On a similar thing, the last video, unfurling the narrative requires, I've talked so much about Bhai Mardana, his lifelong companion who traveled with him for 3 travels, right? Spent about 20 years with him on in the travels, and he knew him much before that, right? A lifelong companion. Entire tradition, the descendants, these are the Muslim descendants of Bhai Mardana from an undivided Punjab where all communities, Hindu, Sikhs, Muslims, Jains, all of them are living together. And then 1947, British divided the subcontinent and leaving, and basically made 10 million people move, 1 million people died. A tradition which was descending from Bhai Mardana, where the Muslim Rababis, as we call them, who would sing Guru Nanak's verses inside the Sikh temples, inside their own small communes. That entire tradition got devastated because in the East Punjab in India, Muslims were eradicated, Hindus and Sikhs were eradicated from the West Punjab in Pakistan. And yet, these are small strands who have continued to maintain this tradition. This is being filmed in Lahore. But I want to actually point out that these people are not the best of the musicians now, because it's the stomach that they're fending for. In the daytime, they basically are doing jobs as laborers, lifting cement and working in construction sites. But whatever little bit of time they get, they are maintaining traditions. We've been able to find many such strands, and I'll just play this and try and bring this to an end now. So from there, I'll just come down to the last slide here. Necessity is the mother of invention. We have navigated, we faced financial challenges, we faced political challenges, we faced time commitment challenges. It's become 3 years of our life dedicated to this project. I don't think the common people can understand what is driving us. We just have belief. We just have very few people around us who supported us, but we've just kept moving forward. We are hoping one day people will realize what's the importance of these narratives and why it needs to be done. Because you can make a commercial movie, 1 hour movie, and throw it out there and make it a box office thing. These are the real crux of the value systems that you have to leave forward for the generations to come, right? And very few people understand this. And we have believed that the divine is supporting us, because we have been able to access all the 100% of the sites in making of this documentary. And look at this, getting visas, overcoming challenges around, literally missing situations, right? But when the corona hit us, we were in India, we were doing the musical recordings of the entire series, 24 episode series. And on the left-hand side, this was the second day into the recording. This was a long process. And we were in a very controlled environment. And then the corona hit us last year and the entire country went on a lockdown. We have been always innovating. And we lifted the entire thing, found another person to actually do the recording for us, who was going to be actually adaptive to our needs. And we moved this entire thing to a home studio, which we constructed with mattresses around us to use as sound absorption. And necessity is the mother of invention, and we've done that. And as you come into Singapore, in a huge cost base, in a proper production, you would go into studios to record. You come to my home, you see how we are recording. This is literally inside our storeroom, a setup which has been created, keeping it very minimalistic cost to get things done. So necessity is the mother of invention. A quality product yet can be produced because Guru Nanak is behind this production team, which basically comprises of, the beauty of this team is in the oneness message. It is Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs coming together. The team is huge. The supporters are huge base, right? And I want to thank all of them. Without the financial supporters, we couldn't have moved forward. But these are the ones who held the cameras and doing the editing piece. I've not mentioned the musicians, and there's a huge structure behind it. But at least the main faces, Vininder Kaur, that's my wife, and Salman Alam Khan. After we finished filming in Tibet, in that moment of joy that we finished it, right? And we are about to leave the country. This is where we were, because it was very hard to film there. So Salman is from Lahore. My wife is a Sikh, he's a Muslim. This is the team in India: Deepak Verma, Pramod Vishwakarma, Hindus, and myself a Sikh. Fahad Maqbool in Baltistan in Pakistan. This is at about 11,000 feet. And Kamran Fazal in the studios in Singapore, who's been cutting this day in, day out. And we are on the 18th episode, still a long way to go. But that's a team. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to just put a perspective in terms of timelines. We expect by the fourth quarter, the English version of this entire sequential narrative will be ready. We are seeking support for Punjabi and Hindi version. We are hoping the value of the product will make people realize that this needs to be done, and we will find the support. We believe that. Thank you very much. And I'm going to turn this back to the team here. To you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amardeep ji. That was an amazing journey. I mean, you have put your life in danger to walk the footsteps of Guru Nanak. Commendable effort for you and the team. Really, really remarkable. There are a couple of questions. I just wanted to let the people on the webinar know that if you will have questions, there's the Q&A button right at the bottom to put in the questions. We've got about 10 plus minutes for question and answer. So do put in your questions so that we can get them addressed as well. There are a couple already there, but maybe let me start off with one of my own. Amardeep ji, I was so fascinated with the presentation that I had a couple that were resonating in my mind. One was, as you mentioned, Guru Nanak had lots of multi-faith interactions and discourses. What was the medium that he used, and what in your journey so far of discovery, what was the mode that he applied for the interactions with different faiths, and more importantly with the different communities? I mean, it was so interesting to see the vast geographies that he covered. How did he interact?
All right. So let's start with, first and foremost, in Punjab. In his early days, he was educated not in just Punjab's language as we see today, the Gurmukhi language, right? In his early days, he was given a very sound education system in the Hijazi, which is the Arabic language in which the Quran is written, the region of Hijaz, the western part of the Arabian desert and all that area. And plus, he was educated in the Landa script. There was nothing as Gurmukhi at that time, the Landa script, which is what has later on transformed into what we call today as Gurmukhi or the Punjabi language. But it's the Indic scripture running from left to right, and he was also taught in the Hijaz from right to left. Now, he's therefore got left to right and right to left navigation from his very early days, right? So he's starting off with a head start. Now, when you start reading scriptural writings or the spiritual writings of men of spiritual disposition, and especially for a person who's traveled to so many and met so many spiritualists, right? One thing that stands out is language is not as clearly demarcated as what we know today. So if you read the Sikh scripture, it's an amalgamation of many languages. What people make a mistake in saying is that if you know Punjabi, you can understand it. No, if you know Punjabi, you cannot understand the Sikh scripture. You have to keep reading it one fine day without, and even have an education, you keep reading it, and suddenly the egg inside your brain shatters, and you suddenly start seeing the deeper meaning of all the words. So what I'm saying is, this is known as, in our Indic traditions, Santon ki bhasha, the language of the mystics. And the mystics' languages have no barriers. And the other thing is, you have to keep in mind is, as he's traveling, he's not flying in a jet. He's going through a journey. So for instance, if he's in South India, and he's going to Sri Lanka, he's going to the southernmost part is Katagama, where there used to be the Shaivite tradition, the followers of Shiva. Now, Tamilians have been going to Shaivite place of Katagama and Nuwara area where Sita was kept. There are Indic traditions pretty much alive. Ramayana and other things were alive at that time. People from central India and South India were traveling to Katagama in Sri Lanka. They were traveling. So the question that I would pose, and this entire belt was a Shaivite belt. The question I would pose, how were they doing it? People from Punjab were traveling to Mecca and Medina. How were they doing it? People from Punjab were traveling to Kailash Mansarovar. How were they doing it? And if you can find the answer to that, because you're not flying in a rapid way on a jet and getting down to an airport and suddenly you're in a new language zone, you're going through a transitionary phase, and you're in a tunnel of spiritualists. And in the tunnel of spiritualists, you talk the same language as the mystics talk.
Thanks, Amardeep ji. Thank you for that. I've got a question from one of the listeners, from Pushan Bardawaj. His question is, the doctrine of oneness was not new in Hindustan at the time of Guru Nanak. Yes, there were deviations from that faith in practice, but why was the need to establish another school of thought in the northwest of Hindustan?
There was no other school of thought. It was, oneness cannot be another school of thought. Oneness is as I said, he was a charismatic reformist. I did not say he set up a new thought. He set up what was the most core value system. Now, yes, oneness has been the primordial humanity's disposition towards that. We are all one. We all want to be living together, right? Don't we? But then somewhere down the line, you forget. And when you forget, a lot of social aspects start coming in, which create barriers. A lot of other issues that start coming in. The subcontinent was being, for many years, was under the invasions from the Turkeys, from the Central Asia. New thoughts were coming in. They had their own cultural aspect. Thought religion, spirituality is not alone. It intertwines with the cultural aspects. Cultural aspects define what it is. Oneness, let's talk about. Oneness is not about religion. Oneness is also about your belief system. So let's take one simple example. Social aspect is about gender. Genders also have to be one. It's not just about religions. But then let's talk about not the Turkic or Central Asian religions coming in with their own cultures and amalgamating in the lands of Punjab and thereafter. Let's talk about what was historic in the Indic tradition. And let's talk about oneness from a different perspective. So Guru Nanak gives a very profound message in Varanasi, which was the seat of the Indic traditions. A lot of scholars used to assimilate there. Women were not being allowed to get into the temples when they would be in the menstruation cycle, because they were considered inferior at that time. They were considered negative energy source at that time. There were reasons for that. There were reasons were that a woman needs to replenish their energy after the childbirth or in the menstrual cycle. They lose a lot of energy. They need to be at home to replenish the energy. That was the intent. But that intent becomes rationalized into a religious protocol that you cannot go into a temple. Now, that's where the reformism is required. So somewhere down the line, oneness was there. That's not a no-brainer. But yet, in practical terms, a woman is going to be different to a man. And Guru Nanak proclaimed a voice. He basically vehemently opposed such thoughts. Yes, for regaining your energy, you need to have the need to be at your home, but you cannot make it a religious imposition, which differentiates a man from a woman. So it's not just about religious thoughts, it's also about thought divisions between the caste systems, the man, woman, the rich and the poor, the animal and the man. Why forget the animal? Guru Nanak is about oneness.
No, thanks, Amardeep. Another question that was here, that was posed was, can you explain or expand the findings regarding Guru Nanak's interactions with Sufi spiritual leaders?
Well, Guru Nanak has met many Sufi spiritual leaders. Starting from Punjab itself, he is meeting with, from Multan, Bahauddin Zakaria's place. He meets at Uch, the Makhdoom of Uch. At Ajmer, he visits Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia's shrine, where he's meeting the contemporary spiritualists there. Baba Farid, 250 years back, before him, he meets him. He basically is interacting with various people of various traditions, and Sufism is not one aspect. There's an Islamic aspect. He goes to Mecca, Medina too, right? The point that I'm trying to say is he's met so many of them. Mm-hmm. When he was in Bangladesh, in Sylhet, he meets the person who has moved from Iran all the way to Bangladesh, and he was also known as Farid out there, because Farid was a generic term. It's not the Baba Farid of Pak Patan. And he basically engages with him also out there. So he engages with a lot of people. The point out here is that what is the message that he's trying to give out of the Sufi engagement? Is it any different than the engagement with what we today call as the Hindu aspect? There was no differentiation. There was no Hinduism, there was no Sikhism, there was no Jainism. These are Indic traditions. I started with 6 philosophical systems, right? And the 6 philosophical systems had various traditions in the Indian aspect. There were Sufi traditions coming from the Western side, and he was amalgamating with all of them. Message was essentially the same. I don't find any difference. He was against ritualism. Ritualism, when he found inside Sufi traditions, he opposed that. What was good, he accepted that. He applauded that. In the Indic traditions, what was good, he applauded that. What was requiring a reformism, he did that. He also went and met a lot of these other traditions, like the Nath Jogis and the many other traditions which are there, the Shaivite traditions, and so many. If you look at the Allegory Tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels, what I hope people will understand is not Guru Nanak, but they will understand the diversity of traditions and strands emerging from a story of Nanak.
Lastly, I mean, I think we're coming to the end of the session itself. What would you like to deliver from the documentary on Guru Nanak in contemporary times? What is the takeaway you would want audiences to leave with?
You know, the beauty of these projects that I have been thrust into, I'm not doing them. I'm just an instrument of delivery. Because when 25 years or before that, when I was in the education system for good about 20 years, in the school system, in the engineering, in the MBA, and thereafter into the corporate system where I spent 25 years, I'll tell you, the question that you're asking is a question that you used to grapple with all the time. What's your vision? What are you trying to deliver? What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to communicate? You know, we are now for the last 6 years, I'm living a life of what I would say as the most fulfilling part of the life, where you don't get driven by what are you trying to deliver to the people. Because the moment you start coming in, your ego starts coming in, nothing gets delivered. Right?
Very, very well said.
You start going in with I'll tell you, every project that I picked up, the 2 books, the few documentaries that I put on YouTube, and this particular project, I tell you, the point that I dread the most is the change between one project to the other project, because in 6 years, we've done 2 massive books, 3 documentaries, an allegory tapestry of the Nanak's travels. I can tell you, I'm not doing it to become Dr. Amardeep Singh, because if I want to do Dr. Amardeep Singh, all these projects would take 15 years to churn, right? And I would need to conform to certain doctorates protocols, and I'm not here to do that. Time is not much. I'm 55 years. I don't know how much more will I live, but whatever little time that I have on this world, it's not about becoming a Dr. Amardeep Singh. It's about following your heart, right? When you follow your heart, what you dread the most is between the projects, that's the valley which comes in, when you lose the purpose of your life. When you're in the corporate world, there is a turmoil, there's a frustration, there is a boss and an environment's frustration, and I've gone through that. But you're running on a treadmill. Every day you get up, you go like a chicken just falling, or like I would say that the ram, you know, just following the straight path and just doing that and coming back and doing that. But in this creative space, there is no structure to follow. All you do is you're in the valley when your purpose is lost and you have nothing else to strive for, and you're just struggling to figure out what's the purpose of your life. And there, the divine seeds a thought.
Excellent.
And when it seeds the thought, the gates start opening. And when the gates start opening, then you say, am I going to do this for a vision, or I'm going to do it because it has to be done? I think that's the answer.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Amardeep ji. With that, I think we come to the end of the session. I hand it back over to Malvika.
Thank you, Amardeep and Simran. And Amardeep, you've really taken us on a truly enlightening journey this evening. And thank you for our audience for joining us this evening, and Simran for leading this engaging discussion as well. As this is a monthly series, I do hope that everybody can join us next month. This series will run until September. So please watch out for updates via email and our PTIX and Facebook pages as well. As I mentioned at the start, this lecture has been presented in conjunction with Sikhs in Singapore, A Story Untold, which is our special exhibition that runs until now at the Indian Heritage Center until the 30th of September. So please do visit us as well. Thank you and have a very good evening.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Appreciate that. Bye-bye.